One reason is I want to go through these TikToks because here soon, possibly January 19th, TikTok has asked the Supreme Court to reverse the law that says that TikTok could be banned in the U.S. And I'm not sure where Danelle is going to uh, post her videos. Maybe the fiction department in the U.S. in the libraries. I don't know where, maybe she'll have to come to YouTube. And if she does, she'll turn the comments off and block every one of us. But I want to try and go through these as many as I can find. I do not go to her TikTok channel. I've never been there. But her TikToks are posted in several of our groups, and I'm in all of them. So let's take a look here. What she says.
Hey there. Your comment assuming there would be screaming from the boys. How did her husband not hear anything? So he was upstairs. They did have a ceiling fan in their bedroom. He also had a TV in his bedroom. The door was shut and it was a floor apart. And there was not a direct line for that.
Did she know the door was shut or not? I've never seen that anywhere. I'm not sure, but we'll listen.
Sound to travel upstairs. So I know that there was some lay persons that went and in the house yelled from the living room.
Can you name these lay persons? Would it be police? Who are these lay persons that yelled down through there? Let me guess. It was a deep throat from the DA's office, or you're not at liberty to say, or you can't discuss that right now. I'm not allowed to put that out. Who are these lay persons? You have to come up with names. You're putting your name on this.
With some ambient noise behind them. The Roman room was downstairs beside the kitchen. That's where the incident happened. There was some people that did just
Some people.
a lay person's experiment, and they yelled from downstairs, and the person upstairs in the bedroom where Darren was located, it was not easily heard initially.
It was not easily heard, but it was heard. Let's stop here for a second.
Far away.
He said he heard the noise, but it was far away. He heard his glass breaking, but it was far away. Now listen to what he says here.
And then I hear Darlie just screaming, Darren, 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 Darren. I mean, just freaking out. I run down the stairs and
then I run down the stairs.
She meets me at the bottom of the stairs. She was trying to tell me that Devin is hurt. Devin. I mean, she just, the look on her face is just startling.
So there's several different interviews where Darren says that he was upstairs and he heard this glass break, but it was far away, like, shh. He heard that from his bed, according to Darren.
Especially if you think about someone being in a complete deep sleep. And Darren was a pretty deep sleeper.
How do you know Darren was a pretty deep sleeper? He says, and look at you licking your lips. That is a sign of deception. You're licking your lips. Look it up, you guys. FBI profiling, body language. You're clearing that shit from your lips because you're getting ready to make room for some new junk to come out of it. Look it up for yourself. Don't believe me.
The actual crime itself probably took less than a whole minute.
Less than a whole minute. Okay. The crime would start as soon as this alleged intruder saw the house and decided that they were going to make entry. The intruder would have had to either climb over the gate or open the gate, which it was testified to that the gate scraped the ground. It opened into the yard, not outside to the driveway. It opened into the yard, and it scraped the ground. Then the intruder would have to shimmy along the mulch to avoid the motion detector lights from the steam house coming on. Okay? Then they would have to decide how they were going to make entry. It's not like they just walked right up and climbed right in that window. Because you can't tell from you can't even see from the alley over that fence unless you climb up on it. Then they would have to cut the screen open, make their way through the dark garage without bouncing off of stuff that was in there. Because you remember they had a whole bunch of stuff in that garage, the 2 cat cages. They had stuff in the garage that they were going through. They were going to have a yard sale because they were hurting for money. They were going to have a yard sale. Now, she said the whole thing take about 15 seconds. That means he got right in there, went right to the knives, went right over to them boys, blam, 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 blam. What you're doing is proving, by adding this intruder, that the boys are the intended target. That's what you're proving here. But I want to listen to it a little bit more.
From opening the door, walking to where Devin was laying would have been less than 15 seconds.
How long would it take him to find the knife? Did he know right where that knife was? Actually, from the utility room door, the knife would have been off to the right on the other side of the stove. They were sticking out pretty well, actually. Went right to the knife. So what you're saying is that someone came in there with the intent to kill right off the bat. 15 seconds. They go in and straight get a knife. That's what you're saying. So there went your robbery theory.
With a man's stride.
Men don't walk any faster or any slower than women. What the fuck?
Grabbing a knife, walking to him would have been about 15 seconds-ish.
Ish. And she's right. There's not a lot of distance there. But you have to look beyond. You got to look at the big picture. That means that he came right in that door, went right to that knife, went right to them kids for no fucking reason. None. None. Again, if it was a robbery, in my opinion, if someone was set just to be a cat burglar, and they would have, while people sleeping, they'd be looking, they'd be sneaking around. They would go get that jewelry. They probably get that jewelry and say, you know what, I've hit this lick. I'm out of here. I don't have to hurt anybody. He's making it seem like they just come right in, fuck them kids, I'm going to kill them. If it was a sexual assault, same thing. In fact, they would have used the kids as leverage. Look that up.
And that's an estimation. And then
No shit.
and the actual impact of those stab wounds, it appears as if Devin was sleeping when this happened.
But the question was, why didn't Darren hear anything? You're talking about everything else.
I'm not an expert, but that's my interpretation of it, because he didn't move from where his pillow and his blanket was. He had...
Devin was killed instantly. Except... I have a real issue with the bruising that was on the back part of his legs and near his ear. I feel like what the juror, Rena Way, felt like. She felt like that Devin was kicking at her because of the bruises on the underside of his leg.
Two stab wounds that were pretty large in size.
Yeah, 2 stab wounds that were pretty deep.
It might have been 3. I don't know. And
You don't know. You know everything about Darlie and what Darlie would do, and Darlie this and Darlie that, and she's innocent. But you don't know how many fucking stab wounds your nephew had? You don't know? You pass it off as like it's not even fucking important right here, Danelle.
And then Damon had 4 stab wounds with some smaller ones as well. And
He had 6 stab wounds. And not smaller ones. Some were deeper than the others. which could indicate that he was trying to move away.
If you think about bam, 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 3 steps, bam, 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 that was less than 8 seconds. So it could very well have happened that fast.
Could have. So what you're saying is that her regression therapy, everything she came up with in her regression therapy was bullshit, right? It was bullshit. Her regression therapy, she came up with 2 men. And that Devin and Damon were trying to get away. And she fell off the couch onto the floor onto Damon. So her regression therapy was bullshit, right? Remember, the question was, why didn't Darren hear anything? And she's going on to all this other shit.
And we don't know, because we don't know who the intruder is, and we don't know.
Well, you know exactly who the intruder is. See what she's doing now? If you're a profiler and you're questioning someone and she's looking off to the left while she's talking, that's called searching. That's body language. That's searching.
Know what actually happened or what his motive was. If there was 2 intruders, it would have happened even quicker.
Yes.
There was some speculation about the size of one of the wounds on one of the boys that could have indicated there was another wound, another weapon.
Nobody. It was your speculation. Look at you searching.
I search you every which way.
Involved, which would support a second intruder. So it just...
You can't even put one intruder in there.
Was really fast. I think all of it happened so fast. As soon as Darlie knew what was happening, she yelled for Darren.
Oh. As soon as Darlie knew what was happening, wrong. She did not. She said Damon tapped her on her shoulder in one story. And she said, "That's when I really came awake." And then she saw a man. And then she followed that man. And as she was following that man, she stopped and turned around and told Damon, "Stay here." And then the man dropped his knife. And he went out the garage. Then she turned around and came back and flipped the light on. And that's when she knew she was cut. And that's when she started screaming. When she saw she was cut.
And then we wake up in a panic. You don't always understand what's going on. So I think
She understood what was going on. She was pretty clear about Damon tapping her, him dropping the knife. She was pretty clear. She totally forgot about that fight that her and Darren had earlier, though. She totally forgot about asking him for a separation. She forgot all about that. Yeah.
I think it just took her a minute to realize, not a minute, seconds, to realize what was...
Yeah, you better clear that up. It took a minute. Brakes on that shit, didn't you? Caught yourself. I was about to get you on that, but you caught yourself.
Going on, and then she yelled for Darren, and after that, he came running downstairs. And
now wait a minute. You know, because she was at the light when she yelled for Darren, at the light switch. There was a mirror just beyond where the wine rack was, according to Darlie. And there's a light switch there, and that's where she saw herself cut. And that's when she conveniently yelled for Darren, who was a very deep sleeper with the door shut a whole floor away, but he heard that. Now Darren says, and his testimony even says, he heard the glass break from upstairs. She's not really answering the question. She's talking in circles here.
And then after she yelled for Darren, she called 911, and that's whenever you really put a clock on the timeline.
No, that's not when you put a clock on the timeline. She could have cut that screen at any time after Darren went to bed. She could have put that knife block in and sat down and worked herself up to what she was about to do, and she knew she was going to do it. That screen could have been cut any time after Darren went to bed, which is about 11 o'clock. He said he remembered the news. He smoked half a joint, though. They kept finding these half joints. They didn't keep finding them, but they found 3 of them in the ashtray, which tells me he only smoked part of one at one time and then saved the rest for later part. He wasn't a big, heavy smoker.
So I hope that answers your question.
No, it doesn't answer the question. You're saying Darren, you didn't mention anything about the boys screaming. If Damon had these mortal wounds, do you expect any of us to believe that he calmly went over to his mother? That means he was already standing up. If she looked up and saw that there was a man there, that means Damon saw him too, right? And he just tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Mommy." The boys didn't have time to scream. Damon was punctured through his lung. He wouldn't have been able to make a scream. She hit them quickly, like you said. Darren heard that glass break. He heard her scream. Basically, your answer should have been, she killed them so quickly that they didn't have time to scream. She didn't scream for Darren until after the intruder left. How convenient for her.
I think it just was all so fast. Have a good day. Thank you.
It was. Very fast.
All right. I have to share this. My sister Dana posted this earlier, and I've always kind of prided myself that I survived this whole situation with Darlie and her conviction, her wrongful conviction, and all of that.
No, you have not survived this. You have not. This has overtaken your life and taken a good person like yourself. I believe that you're a good person. Right? I believe that you are someone that's friendly, you're loving, you're a good mom. I believe that. But it's taken you and made you a manipulative liar. When it comes to this case, when it comes to your sister, you become something that you're not, which is exactly what your sister did that night. I believe 100% that Darlie was a good mother. She was frustrated with them kids. They were getting on her nerves. She was frustrated with the money. But she became something that she wasn't, and she has to pay for that. You can't just erase that and say, well, that's not the way she always was. You are not a survivor of this.
Without having any long-lasting effects. I might have been wrong.
You're very wrong. How could that not have an effect on you? No matter your sister did it or not. You don't have long-lasting effects for the fact that your nephews were killed by someone?
So we all have traumas that we go through. Everybody. And not everybody's is nearly as famous or well-known as mine, considering mine was
famous. And you're calling it yours. Famous. You could have used different wording for that. Like well-known. I'm sure that my case, my son would be famous if we were out here every day talking about how innocent he was and how everybody fucking lied on him. Even though we know the evidence shows that he did this. We'd look like a bunch of idiots, just like you do. We know he's guilty.
International news. But everybody has traumas, and we all deal with them differently. And when Dana posted this, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I started reading some of these descriptions that go along with complexed PTSD. And I was like, ugh, maybe that is what I have. Let's look at it.
Well, there's a history of PTSD in your family. Your mother went through counseling. Darlie had some of it. Let's see what she says here.
All right. It's interesting because multiple of these fit me. Experiencing ongoing physical anxiety symptoms, aka auto stress, check. Never really had anxiety beforehand, but as an adult, I have anxiety. And
Yeah, you were a child, so how would you have anxiety then?
I think it comes from worrying about things that you can't control. Living in a state of hypervigilance, check. I am constantly worried about my children. I'm constantly worried about what's going on around them, about what's going around us, about whether we are healthy. There's a plethora of things that I'm constantly worrying.
She hasn't said this yet, but is she worried about some unknown intruder coming in their house to kill her children?
About because of what has happened to my family. Living in a state of hypervigilance definitely fits me. Experiencing intense or rapidly changing emotions. I don't think that I have rapidly changing emotions. I've never.
Oh, let somebody tell you how guilty Darlie is, and we'll see your emotions change real quick. I've seen it.
I've never noticed rapidly changing emotions. Difficulty in developing and maintaining relationships. I really don't have an issue with that. I actually think I have the opposite of that and become overly attached to people, maybe.
She seems like a really friendly woman. Outside of the Darlie, let's take the whole Darlie thing away. She seems like a very friendly person.
Because I genuinely love everybody so much. I just think that there needs to be more love in the world. So that's probably why I am overly attached to people, maybe. Feeling as though you're inherently flawed or damaged. I don't feel like I am personally inherently flawed or damaged, but I do understand what this feels like. Specifically early on in Darlie's situation, when all this was going on, I remember thinking about how nobody could understand, because, you know, to me, nobody could possibly have ever been in my shoes. I now know that a lot of people have been in my shoes, but anyways.
Absolutely. And it just depends on how you handle it. The first stage of denial is anger. And when somebody tells you Darlie's guilty, that angers you quickly. If somebody tells me my son is guilty, I'll be like, yeah, he is. And your son did this. Yeah, I know. It doesn't make me angry. It doesn't make me angry when they say that. It just never. It did at first when I felt like he might have been innocent there for 2 weeks.
Feeling as though you're completely different from other people. Yes. Mostly because I have seen so much and have been exposed to so much. As an adult, I've seen things that I did not realize as a child.
Yeah, that's called growing up.
That was going on. Some of the cruelty stuff that happened to our family, some of the things that people said, I just can't even imagine ever saying that kind of stuff to a live person.
You can't imagine it. You've done it. You did it to me. And you were confronted with my kids because of it.
Having an unclear sense of identity. This fits for me because I have always been...
Oh, you know who you are. You're Darlie's baby sister. That's your claim to fame. You're Darlie's baby sister.
Kind of proud of who I am because a lot happened to me, and I'm still a nice person. I still function in society and contribute and volunteer and help other people and provide for my family and all of those things. So I don't think that it's an unclear sense of my identity, but it does kind of get tricky sometimes. Okay. Finding it difficult to trust others. I do have difficulty trusting other people, but I still trust. Like, I have that voice in my head saying, you shouldn't trust them. But like I trust everybody, unfortunately. To a fault, probably. Experiencing fear of abandonment. I don't know if this is true for me or not. I definitely don't want to be alone for an extended amount of time. Like I just don't like to be alone. I like to be with people in general. Which is funny because I work from home and I'm alone 90% of the day. Blah. Problems with assertiveness, asking for help, and saying no. This is a big one for me. I don't like to step on toes, and if somebody asks me for help, it is really hard for me to say no. That has been a struggle my entire life because I know what it feels like to not have help and to need help. And so
Where do you know where that comes from? How do you know what it feels like to not have help?
will jump in even if people don't ask me for help. And I see that they need help, I will jump in and help. I can't help it. I just can't help it. Problems with memory and concentration, yes. But I also might have some ADHD in there as well. So,
hey, your ADHD is superficial, though.
who knows which came first, the PTSD or the ADHD? Let's see. Sleep disturbance. I also learned I do have issues with sleep, but I worked night shift for a good while, so that kind of messes up your sleep routine. But also, I have a genetic predisposition to having insomnia. I did the 23andMe DNA.
Where do you get that pre-genetic disposition from insomnia? Where's that come from? Because it seems to me Darlie had a really easy time sleeping. She slept through 2 murders. Hand being sliced on her throat. She slept right through that.
Study, and apparently that's a thing. I didn't know, but now it's explained a little bit better. Addiction problems. I do not have any specific vices. I've never really had an issue with alcohol or tobacco. I do, however, though, think that maybe I could.
Brings me back to the statement that Darlie made about right after the murder. She said, everybody kept giving me pills. And she was only around her friends and family. Everybody kept giving me pills. And they found a lot of different pills in her house.
Like comfort eating is absolutely a thing. So that could be part of it. Impulsive and or risk-taking behaviors. I can be impulsive at times, but it's usually more impulsive, like buying things at the grocery store. Do I need that? No, but I'm going to buy it anyways. But not like, I am not a risk taker, typically speaking. And then experiencing derealizations and or depersonalizations. Nah. Problems with sensory processing. Yes, that is an issue for me. Eating problems. Sometimes I overeat. I think a lot of Americans do, but it's because it tastes.
Too much booty in the pants. Too much booty in the pants. 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 Pants.
Tastes good, and who doesn't like that feeling of having a full belly? It's a comfort thing for me, for sure. Struggling with parenting. I've never struggled with parenting per se. I am maybe a little bit over involved or too involved in my kids' lives. I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know. If it's going to be one way or the other, it's going to be that way. I'm way more involved in my kids' life. And then experiencing hallucinations, self-harm, and or suicidal ideation.
You do experience hallucinations. You've been hallucinating this fucking intruder for 28 years now. That's a hallucination.
Ideations. I've never had either of those, but several of these at the top definitely fit my bill. So I just thought I'd share this because I thought it was really interesting. Complex PTSD is a real thing. I've never been personally diagnosed. I've never seen or sought out any counseling because of my trauma with what
Mama has. Your mama has, and you were talking about pre-genetic disposition. That's usually alcoholism or drug abuse. Pre-genetic dispositions.
happened with my nephews and Darlie being arrested and wrongfully convicted and all that. But I had a really good family support system. So I think we did pretty well, all things considered. And when Darlie comes home, we can hash it out together and discuss everybody's versions of PTSD, because I'm sure Darlie has significant PTSD. I know Dana has PTSD. I'm sure my mom has PTSD. It's the trauma. All right, I thought I would share this. I'm going to hide myself so that y'all can see it. If you need to scroll the utility room door into the home. Darlie and Darren were having some car issues, and Darlie's Pathfinder was not parked in its normal spot, and Darren's Jaguar was in the shop. They could have easily have assumed that nobody was home at the time of.
They could have assumed that nobody was home. Let's look at the black car theory. All right, they said that someone was stalking that house with a black car, which is a load of crap. People would slow down to look at that fountain, and they would sit there to look at that fountain. Listen to what she's got to say. They could have assumed that nobody was home, but as soon as they got in, and they're standing in that kitchen area, and they're looking over that kitchen bar, they know somebody's home now. Break-in, robbery. No cars in the area. No other cars in the area, according to Gorsuch, who had a view of the front, the back, all of it.
The break-in. So intruder breaks in, goes through the laundry room door. At the laundry room door, there is piles of mismatched socks. This is where I believe this.
Yeah, you didn't mention him grabbing that sock right away. So they got time. You just break in somebody's house and you're going to go through their fucking laundry real quick.
Sock came from, grabbed the sock to use it if needed. The intruder themselves had some weapon in their possession, and this
speculation. That's not a fact at all. See, Charles Lynch did testify that screen cut was done with a serrated edge knife. That's one thing they can't take away.
Second intruder probably did not have a second.
Probably did not. Probably. Look at her looks.
Weapon. So that's where the knife was pulled from the butcher block in her house. They proceeded through the kitchen to the Roman room, which was a downstairs living area where the green leather couches were. The boys had fallen asleep downstairs. Darlie had fallen asleep on the couch. They were just having like a sleepover and watching TV. The intruder proceeds through the living room, not really able to see the boys because it was just kind of blankets on the ground.
Not really being able to see the boys. You can't be fucking kidding me. The TV was on. They were right in front of it.
I speculate that one of the boys had either been stepped on or possibly just kicked on accident, and at that point the intruders had to eliminate any suspects.
So they grab a knife, they grab a sock for their hand, and they grab a knife just in case there were some people home.
Darlie was injured. Devin and Damon were killed with stab wounds penetrating their chest. Devin's did not go all the way through, despite popular belief.
Not popular belief. We know that it didn't go all the way through, and so does Toby Shook when he says in several interviews that they were impaled. Impaled does not mean a through and through. You cannot change that word. Impaled means it went through his body, and it did. But nobody said it went through his body and came out in the back. Toby Shook knows. There's other people that said impaled too.
They did puncture his lungs and his sternum. Damon's wounds were in his back, and I do believe they went through. They then slit Darlie's throat and cut into the muscle that protects her
Platysma muscle.
neck, and the knife actually touched the carotid sheath, only being stopped by the gold necklace that...
Oh, they're giving us this crap about the gold necklace. That is a bunch of shit. That is a bunch of shit. Gold is extremely hard to cut with a knife. Even if it's 14, 10, or 24 karat. I mean, it would have to been... The rest of the wound would have to just damn near took her head off for it to be that powerful to cut that gold. That's a fact.
She wore every day. That gold necklace was embedded in the wound, and when she got to the emergency room, an ER nurse removed all of her jewelry before she was taken to surgery, and that was a pretty quick process.
Yay! At least you're admitting that it didn't have to be surgically removed.
The jewelry was the necklace was returned to us and does have evidence of damage from the knife itself.
No, it has evidence of damage, right? Because it wasn't a new necklace. It was one that she purchased from a pawn shop.
The intruder, after injuring Darlie, then turns and runs, both of them exiting.
Both of them now. She saw a man. A man.
House. One of them dropping their knife on the way. The other knife was not recovered, but maybe it was.
Because it didn't happen.
It's kind of cloudy. Well, I'll get into that.
Yeah, she wants to talk about Guzman and the knife that was found directly across from where the sock was found. It was found in a garden that was being worked on and had been worked on for a week prior. There was evidence, there was a shovel out there and knives and spoons out there. And he testified that he and his mother had been working on that garden for a week. So that means, would somebody take that knife from the garden and then on the way down the alley, they drop the sock and put that knife right back in that garden?
Intruder leaves through the door he came out of. That's his route. He knows the route. That's usually the route they're going to take.
What door?
Path of least resistance. Nobody standing in his way. Straight out the door, out through the gate, and down the alley where he loses the sock. 75 yards away. No blood dripped along the way. And sock was left at a storm ditch where it could have either been thrown towards the storm ditch or towards the trash can that was right beside it. However, the intruder missed his intended target and
Darlie missed.
kept running because there was a lot of...
He's running down the alley. Running. Nobody hears this, right? He's not trying to be sneaky. All right. And again, nobody heard Darlie either. A lot of us speculate that Darren took that knife, took that sock, and went out the front door and slithered along the side because there is an opening right there where the sock was found. There's an opening in the gates right there. There's every 3 houses in Texas. There's a law like Rich Prater talks about.
Commotion going on at that time, and he's just trying to get out of the area. It is most likely that a car was parked further down the alleyway, and that's where they picked up their car and drove off. Or who knows?
Most likely, huh? They would have had to go out Linda Vista, right? Because if you go to the end of that alley and you turn off to the right, you're way stuck back in the Platte. If you turn off to the left, you're just beyond where Linda Vista is. And if your car was there, Waddell was there within a minute and like 30 seconds. He was 1.9 miles away, sitting at Victory Baptist Church, 1.9 miles. He would have seen another car. And they asked him, had he seen other cars coming out there? And he said no.
Left between two houses and walked down Del Rock and exited the area in that direction.
Yeah, see, she has to put him down Dow Rock. Because she can't put him down Linda Vista because she knows what I'm talking about right here.
3:30 a.m. Police show up on the scene. Jimmy Patterson.
3:30 a.m. Police were there around 2:30 a.m.
Then notifies James Cron that they're going to need some crime scene.
Patterson did not notify James Cron. James Cron states clearly that he was notified by the 911 dispatcher.
Analysis. James Cron shows up shortly thereafter. Jimmy Patterson goes to the hospital to talk with Darlie, where he takes absolutely no notes. Nothing's ever written down.
Why would he? As a matter of fact, Jimmy Patterson said that he did the talking to Darlie, and Chris Frosch, the detective behind him, took notes, writing them down. It's all in the testimony, where they claim that he took the fifth, but you can hear his testimony about what happened with the crime.
James Cron enters the home, and some reports say that within 7 minutes he knew that it was an inside job.
What report says that it was 7 minutes? James Cron says himself it took him about 30 minutes to determine that it looked like an inside job to him. Where's this 7 minutes come from? I've never fucking heard that. I've been studying this since you were a kid.
The most common documentation is that in 30 minutes he was determined to convict Darlie of this crime.
She tried to add that 7 minutes in there. That's never been heard by anyone that studied this case anywhere. No one. And she's doing that whole search-in thing again when she talks about this.
Brother, I'm searching. I'm searching every which way, yeah, yeah. But I'd like to know where's the mountain. You know I'll bring it in someday.
At that time, Darlie's recovering from post-op. She had surgery to close up those wounds, and she was placed in the ICU with an
She was placed in the ICU. Here we go with this bullshit again. Watch. She was in the ICU in recovery, but you have to look at Dr. Alejandro Santos as for the reason why he put her in there. She was never an ICU critical care patient. Never. He put her in there to keep her away from people so she could rest. They didn't let the family go in there. It was a couple hours so she could rest. The media, they had stayed away. Yeah. Cerullo said she waited 5 hours to see her. 5 hours.
arterial line to monitor her vital signs. Her blood loss was estimated to be about 2,000 mLs. That's rough. Her hemoglobin hematocrit had dropped at least 2 points.
Hemoglobin dropped to 2 points. Well, I'm not a physician. I'm not a doctor, but I know if your hemoglobin drops below 6.5, 6 points, that it's life-threatening. This never happened. She's a liar.
We don't know exactly when her last H&H was. I don't have any documentation of a previous H&H, but it was down at least 2 points from what her normal typically was.
So if you don't have any documentation of what it was before, then how can you say what it normally is now?
That's a lot of blood loss for so-called self-inflicted wounds.
Oh, it's not 50% though. That's what you said on 2020.
So
Actually, you said 5 liters.
Darlie at that point recovers. She stays in the hospital and is released on June 8th. She comes home. We have a funeral on June 9th, and she's arrested 12 days after the crime and convicted of murdering her 2 boys and maybe attempted suicide, or what they thought was just self-inflicted wounds. Clearly, they were not self-inflicted.
Why is it clearly they're not self-inflicted when even Dr. DeMaio, the defense's witness, said the best person to determine whether or not those wounds were self-inflicted or to estimate the wounds would be the doctors who actually worked on her. That's what Dr. DeMaio said on the stand.
That's part 1. We will get into some more of the unexplainable details in part 2.